Hello, and welcome to episode 92 of TBR, the To Be Read podcast, where we talk about the books we love and the topics that interest us. I'm Patrick Stemp, and as always, I have Michael Ronn and John L. Monk with me. How are you guys doing?
Great, Patrick. How are you tonight?
Doing good.
Hang on, guys. Give me 2 seconds here.
I
just did the thing that I said I wasn't going to do before we started recording, and now I forgot to turn YouTube off. So anyway, so tonight we have David Wright joining us. How are you, Dave?
All right. How are you all doing?
Great. Thanks for coming. Dave is the co-host on the Self-Publishing podcast and author of way too many books to talk about in one sitting, but most recently Jumper, Karmic Police. And we'll talk a little bit about that because our topic tonight is body swapping or swapping bodies. And before we get to that, we will do our weekly roundtable and talk about what we've been reading lately. Anybody want to jump in and volunteer to go first, or do you want me to pick?
I think I should go last because I'm going to be talking about the body swapping book that Dave wrote. So fair enough.
Okay. Dave, do you want to go? Have you been reading anything interesting?
Oh God. No, because I've been having to reread our Available Darkness series because I'm working on the third book right now. So I've been going back because my memory is absolutely horrible. So I've been going back and forth reading that. So I kind of had to put a pause on everything. Before that, I had started Stephen King's 11/22/63.
Mm-hmm.
But I got sidetracked, as I tend to do whenever I start reading fiction.
And I think I was going to mention that the last time you were on, the big recommendation that you had for us was The Girl with All the Gifts. And I think that ended up being somewhere in the top 5 of each of our best reads of last year. So that was a great recommendation. We all loved that one.
I don't read a lot of books, but I've been lucky with the ones that I have read that they've been great. So that's that was one of them. The other one that I read a couple of years ago, Every Day by David Levithan, which is the whole body jumping thing.
Right. We'll talk about that some more as well. Michael,
Yeah.
What have you been reading lately?
Well, I don't remember where I was last week because I was out last week. But I did finish a couple books. I finished Throwing Lead, A Writer's Guide to Firearms. That's by J. Sawyer and Mary, can't see the last name, Sampson, I think it is the last name. And that's basically like how to use guns, right? So it's interesting because as a writer, I guess I've never really held a gun, so I never thought about it. But I kind of need to know that. So it talks about everything you need to know. I mean, it talks about how guns are made, how to use them, mistakes that writers make when they're talking about guns, and then just like the critical errors to avoid, which some things I guess you never would think about, right? Like if you have a Glock, you're going to use that differently than you would use a revolver, But so that was that. I thought that was really interesting. It was a lot longer than I thought it would be. I think it's like 300 or 400 pages, and it's
wow.
I was like, wow, for a book of that topic, I didn't think there was that much to cover. I mean, but it talks about like like police and what they go through and like things that you write about that how a police officer would think about it, which I thought was really interesting. So yeah, I would recommend this one. I picked up a lot of like these topical books. Like I picked up one on like a civilian's guide to the U.S. military. I thought that was interesting, and there was another one that popped up on the Also Bots on Amazon, and that was for lawyers, like the writer's guide to getting lawyers right. So I just kind of interested in that lately. So I finished that, and then I am currently reading The Burning Room by Michael Connelly, which is I think it's the 16th book in the Harry Bosch series. And I absolutely love this. I'm about maybe 2/3 of the way through it. I talked about how I read The Black Echo, which is the first Harry Bosch book. Didn't really care for it. It just didn't really blow me away. This, you can totally see the evolution of this guy's craft. It's kind of awesome. Like, Bosch just like jumps off the page. And I'm not really a big crime novel reader, but I love this. This is great. So I can't wait to finish it.
Have you watched the TV show?
I have not, but after I finish this, I do plan to watch it because I think it's on Amazon Prime. So yes. I think can watch it. Have you seen it, Dave?
No, I haven't. It is on my list though,
Yeah.
and I like the actor that it plays the lead. He's good.
Yeah, that's what I've heard too. So yeah, I would definitely recommend that if you guys haven't checked out Bush. It's pretty cool.
Okay.
So that's,
Yeah,
that's
maybe
been
I
my
should.
week.
Maybe I should jump ahead in the series because I think I'd said before, like I read the first 5 or 6 pages of that first book, and it just didn't pull me in.
Yeah, there's definitely a case if you don't like a book in a series like that, there's definitely the case for either reading forward or reading back. Like it's amazing how different it is.
Okay. So John said he wanted to go last, so I'll go next. So, excuse me, I had one of those weeks where I did a ton of reading but didn't finish anything, just because I've got so many good books on the go at once. So I'm working on Written in Fire, which is the 3rd book in Marcus Saki's Brilliance trilogy, and absolutely loving that. Had to start reading that one right away because, as I said last week, book 2 ended on a series of cliffhangers, which I don't generally like, but I was willing to give them the benefit of the doubt, and book 3 is just as good. I continued reading Mutation. That's that Nerys Wheatley zombie book. Started, of course, Robert J Sawyer after 3 years of not having put anything out. Just released a new book, and he's. Have any of you guys ever read Robert J Sawyer?
No.
I don't think so.
The sort of, I think they call him like the dean of Canadian science fiction, and he's just a brilliant writer. And so he's finally has a new book out. It's called Quantum Night, and he tends to write sort of hard science fiction, but without getting too dragged down into the details. It's really cool stuff. I think if I was gonna, so I think you remember the first book by an author that you read fondly. That's why I'll always love The Sirens of Titan by Vonnegut. That'll always sort of be my favorite Vonnegut. Calculating God by Robert J Sawyer will always be probably my favorite book of his, where aliens come down to the Royal Ontario Museum in Toronto, I think it is, and say, take us to your scientists. And it's a really cool idea. These aliens have come to Earth, and they're trying to prove the existence of God by showing how the same sort of events happened on every planet that has life on it around the same time in the evolution of that planet. So there were creatures like dinosaurs, and they were wiped out by a meteor. Those types of things, to say basically like that kind of thing. For it to happen to one planet with life on it is coincidence. For it to happen on all planets with life on them is so they're trying to use math to prove God, basically.
At what point do the Kardashians being a thing happen on other planets? Because I think maybe an extinction event might be called for on some planets. Just saying.
Yeah, I think they're maybe why we need an extinction event. They're not like the event itself, I think. Anyway, so if you like hard sci-fi and you've never read Robert J Sawyer, I'd highly recommend him. I continued with Midshipman's Hope, which is our book of the month, about 20% of the way through on that. And then I started Iterate and Optimize today, which is the follow-up, I guess, to Write, Publish, Repeat by Johnny B. Truant, Sean Platt, and
Those clowns.
with David Wright. Yeah. So I started that today, not too far into it because it just kind of showed up on my Kindle this morning. But I'm enjoying it so far. And that's my week. So tons of reading, nothing completed. So, John, that puts you up next.
Only 20% of Midshipman's Hope? Are you kidding me?
Hey, I'm on track to finish it by the end of the month. That's all that matters.
I'm at 0% if that helps.
Oh my God. Hey, look.
I've been putting it off.
Listen,
I need to get on.
I can only take so many spankings, like reading about
What?
evil. There's lots of spanking in this book. Yeah.
Awesome. Hold on. Adding it to my wish list.
It's realistic stuff. All right, so okay, well, I read Karma Police, Jumper Karma Police, which is the first book in I guess the Karma Police series by David Wright here and Sean Platt. I loved it. I'm not just saying that because he's here. I loved it, and I'm really looking forward to the next one. Had a lot of heart, a lot of human emotion and feeling. I actually cared about the characters and what their problems were. It wasn't just like, he killed my father and now I must kill him kind of stuff where you just like, yeah, I don't care about that. I really cared about it. So it's very fast moving. I don't know if this is an insult or not, but it reminded me of a really speedy Dean Koontz thriller like Intensity, which is one of my favorite books by Dean Koontz.
You're pronouncing his name wrong, I think, but we're a clean show, so I'm not going to say his middle name.
Okay. I'm not sure what you mean.
And what just because probably some of the people listening don't know what it's about. What's a little bit about the plot there?
Of course. It's about this. I would say this guy kind of felt like a guy, but you can't really tell because the way the stories kind of unfolds. The rules about the body hopping. Basically, it's about this person who wakes up every day in a different body. Okay, kind of like Every Day. I guess because I haven't read Every Day. This is the only other body hopping book that I set out to read, except for maybe Tale of the Body Thief by Anne Rice. And he wakes up every day, doesn't know why he or she is doing it. He's showing up in guy bodies, girl bodies, children bodies. At least that's what the narrator says right in the beginning. So this isn't quite a spoiler. It starts like kind of page 1 or 2 almost. Doesn't know what's going on, but sort of goes through the motions of trying not to screw up too much. I got a lot of that. You can do a lot of damage when you're body hopping. I don't want to give away too much, Dave. I don't know if you're getting uncomfortable yet.
No, not yet.
Okay. So anyway, I love the concepts, how he or she did the body hopping or the jumping. I'm not really going to get into the mechanics of it too much. I love the way the book dealt with sexuality. It wasn't from like an activist kind of like I want to confront you with topics of sexuality. I just thought the mechanics of dealing with sexuality were, and also just the realism of it just was very interesting to me. I loved how the story ended. I guess from a writer's perspective, I consider that a big deal because I find it kind of difficult to give that really impactful ending. At least I think. Anyway, I was impressed by it. It's a first-person narrative. I know that Dave didn't used to like first-person narratives, and I don't know why. He does it beautifully. It's present tense. I don't like present tense usually. I suffered through it with the Hunger Games and completely forgot that I was reading present tense when I was reading Dave's book. So in that respect, he pulled it off invisibly, which is the best way to do. And that's it.
Check is in the mail.
No. By the way, it sounds like I'm totally kissing his ass, but I guess.
How can I get one of these checks?
It sounds like I am, but I really loved it because, as you know, I wrote a body hopping book of my own, and one of the things I thought was kind of interesting was he kind of, we ran into the same types of things. Like, what do you do when you run into somebody, that seems like a nice person? Do you kiss them, or do you just hold back, or where are the moral kind of lines drawn up in there? Things like that. So it was kind of neat every time I saw some little thing like not knowing the password of your computer, for example. I was like, oh yeah, that's kind of cool. I did that too. But no, it's a totally different book though, and it was really good. I think
so
it pulled that in mind.
So if we roll that into the overall discussion of body swapping and head hopping, I was going to say one of the things that occurs to me with these books, I've read a little bit of a few of these like head hopping sort of books, and I think you both did it, where I'm trying to think of a body hopping story where maybe the guy who's hopping bodies is the opposite, the sort of choice that you guys made, where he's just like, screw it, man. Then every body I jump into, I'm just going to make their life, I'm just going to ruin everything for them. I'm just going to rob a bank, shoot somebody, because why not?
Yeah.
Maybe that says more about me, but,
The Cleric Quintet by R.A. Salvatore, the Cleric Quintet. It was this little series of books that he did when he was doing his Drizzt kind of books. And he had an assassin who could take over people's bodies, and he would do all kinds of terrible, cruel things, like have them kill their families and stuff like that, and laugh about it. And the opportunity in body hopping to do awful things is like really, really there,
Yeah, and that is one of those things where, my character, begins as sort of a blank slate because they don't remember their past prior to a year from the date that the book opens. They don't know who they were before all of this. So they do feel well. There's a confusion in their life, but there's also a sense of responsibility that they don't want to screw up the lives. They basically want to leave them pretty much as they found them. And that is something, John was talking about a moment ago, like, getting into relationships and stuff like that. That presents a quandary, because if you start a relationship with somebody new, like let's say the person wasn't attached to somebody and they start a new relationship, then they leave that body the next day. They don't know, what that person will remember from their time in the body, and additionally, they don't want to lead them down like a bad path that they wouldn't normally choose themselves.
Because they're good people, which...
Yes, so far anyway. I mean, we're early in the series. I mean, no.
Spoilers. I think it'd be interesting to see a story like that where you've got somebody doing that and then somebody else kind of hopping around behind them trying to sort of catch up to them and stop them.
Well, I don't want to spoil anything, but there is another jumper in my series.
There we go.
He mentioned that at the end of the book. He just gave the ending away.
Not really, though.
No, it wasn't. That's not the spoiler. If you're going to tell a spoiler, that ain't it. So that's a detail. And by the way, it was a great hook too, and it made me really want to get the next book.
Cool. And so I think, John, you mentioned you haven't read it, but Dave, I think last time you were here you mentioned the book too, but your favorite body swapping book, is it David Levithan?
Yes, every day. And that was a young adult book, and I remember the hook is what got me, because it starts off with a character, and you don't know their sex either, and they fall in love with somebody, and they fall in love with a girl when they're in this girl's boyfriend's body, but then they start jumping in other bodies, and they're always like somewhere around this girl. So this is the first time that this character has actually, and it's a teenage character, the first time that this character has actually been able to maintain a relationship through several bodies, and the trickery of doing that. It is a love story, and it does handle like sexuality in a way that I thought was really good. I think the author is gay himself, but the book doesn't feel too heavy-handed, like in a political way where it's
that's what I meant.
Promote a message, but it does something that I got several years ago from Clive Barker, one of his books, Sacrament, in which it's prior to reading Sacrament, I had a different idea of gay people. Like I couldn't even understand it at all. And it was one of those things where I had my own prejudices. I wasn't a homophobe by any means, but at the same time I had prejudices, and the very idea of like how could two guys or two girls be with each other kind of, it didn't seem right to me. It kind of disturbed me. But after I read that, there was a realization that came upon me that love is love, and it transcends gender. And for a book to be able to do that, to move you in that way, and not being a political sort of thing, just an emotional sort of thing where you realize like all veneers are down, and you realize that people are people, and to me it's an amazing thing. And this book sort of did it. Every Day sort of did that, like love beyond all things, beyond male female constructs, and I really liked it a lot. The one thing I didn't love about Every Day was, well, I did like it, but I didn't. There was a sense of an enemy in the book that's very late in the book, but it's barely touched on, and it feels like that should have been the launching point to a different sort of story. And that is like the kind of story I wanted to tell. Like, what happens when there is another out there? What does it have? Because David doesn't really explore the origins of why his person is jumping from body to body to body. And to me, that mystery is the sort of thing that really drives a story. I loved his story for what it was, the love story and all of that. But he almost completely, the mystery itself he almost ignores to some extent because he doesn't really resolve it. Whether he will or not in the future, I don't know. I'd love to see him do it. But I wanted to write a story where like this like it inspired me so much that I wanted to write a story where that part of the thing is, you know, really explored, the mystery and like my own sort of origin story. And for a while I wasn't even going to write it, but then I thought more about it, and the fact that, you know, if you look at every day, it's kind of like Quantum Leap, but without time travel. And then I started talking to John because you guys, I think, had mentioned that John's book, you know, was similar in theme. Yeah. And I began reading that. And I reached out to John. I said, hey, I just want to make sure that I'm not, like, stepping on your toes. Like, I'm not writing the same thing. Because I don't want to copy somebody, even if it's, like, an unintentional thing. And I'm already sort of copying every day in a way. So I really don't want to do it twice over. And I want my own original spin and take on it. And, you know, I felt that what John was doing was different enough, and what David Levithan was doing was different enough that I was like, okay, we're going to go ahead and write this story because I really want to. I love it.
I think it's an underserved genre, if you want to call it. I mean, an idea. I mean, there's a billion cop stories out there, lots of detective stories and serial killer stories, stories with dragons in them and stupid wizards and everything else. But like, I can't think of I can't fill up a handful of stories unless I include Quantum Leap, where you got body hopping going on. So it's so friggin' underserved.
Well, I was thinking too. I think it also what constitutes body hopping. So before I get to that though, I was just going to say, Dave, if you want a book that will then take you to that sort of next level of love, different types of relationships, read The Man Who Folded Himself. Which I'm trying to remember. I think maybe I heard of that book from Johnny. I think maybe he's read it. But it's a time travel story where he keeps meeting himself, ends up living in a house with like 50 copies of himself, and he's like, why not? And
that sounds like my idea of hell.
It gets really weird. It can get a little uncomfortable at times. The story. It's a classical like science fiction story. It's great. But it occurred to me while we were talking about the body hopping, first of all, that I kind of wonder if you could say that amnesia stories. So, for example, one of the books we read recently was The Rook. So this character, she wakes up in the middle of nowhere and she has no idea who she is, but she wakes up in a field surrounded by bodies where the people are wearing like gloves, and there's a letter in her pocket from herself saying, you don't know who you are, but I used to be you, and here's, you know,
sounds like the beginning of our Available Darkness book.
So I think an amnesia story is you find yourself in a body and you don't know who you are or where you are. You know, Memento maybe could be. It's not really. You're in the same body, but it's a different mind, right? And so, because one of the other ones I had on my list initially too was Big, with Tom Hanks. And so it's still Freaky Friday, but that's actually a body swap too, right? With and which I didn't realize. I think that movie's been made like 3 times. Like the Jamie Lee Curtis one was just sort of the most recent one. But I mean, in Big, Tom Hanks goes from, so it's the same body, but sort of forced to live 20 years, kind of putting a child's body in a 25 or 30-year-old man. But yeah, Freaky Friday was definitely a big one. What was the other movie that came out around the same time? With what's her name? She used to be sweet, but now she's kind of.
I have no idea.
If I could remember the actress's name, if I could remember the actress's name.
Talking about Lindsay Lohan?
Yeah.
I think she was in Freaky Friday.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
So was that her and Jamie Lee Curtis? Maybe. Okay.
Are you thinking of like The Parent Trap?
Maybe.
That's like where they switch parents though, right?
Identity swapping, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
So I might have my movies mixed up, but yeah, Freaky Friday. I can't remember who the kid was in that with Jamie Lee Curtis. Maybe it was her.
I don't remember. It's definitely, it's one of those things, I think, you know, especially as a kid, like that's interesting because, you know, as a kid you want to be an adult and having the opportunity to swap. And I think as an adult, you know, you kind of forget what it is to be a kid. And I think that's an interesting comedic premise. definitely. As far as like other forms of fiction, though, it is one of those things where I think it's very interesting because there is a mystery there, but there's also we're different from one another. We all have these artificial differences between us. Like all people have artificial differences, religion, race, any of the gender, any of those things. Where we lose touch with what it is to be human. We have these other walls that we put up. And I think the body swapping sort of book sort of breaks those down and forces you to see through eyes that aren't your own and learn, a sort of empathy or sympathy, I'm not sure, of what it is to be other people. I mean, that's sort of, I'm not meaning to get all philosophical here. I mean, that wasn't. I mean, my intent in writing the book isn't a philosophical message. But it is one of those things. As you get into it, you explore it because you imagine yourself. What would you do if you did wake up in these different bodies and forced to live in these other lives? And I think a lot of times we, as people, pass judgment on other people that have different lives than ours. Like we might pass judgment on a drug dealer that is doing stuff they're not supposed to do, but that is their reality. And we didn't grow up like that. We didn't grow up in that situation. And yes, there are choices everybody can make to live a different sort of life, but it's not always cut and dry, black and white sort of thing. And that's one of those things I learned when I worked at a newspaper, like the different realities that people live in, because I covered all sorts of different people's lives and got to interview different people from different walks of life, and there were so many differences, but at the same time there's so many similarities. And to me, it was one of those things where I would just love if you could swap a whole bunch of different people so they can learn a sort of empathy for other people and not be so judgmental, and really get a first-hand experience of what it's like.
You're talking what you're saying. You're talking about The Egg. If you've read Andy Weir's 300-word short story.
No, I didn't read that.
I'm sure you've read The Martian, I'm sure.
No, I actually started The Martian but didn't finish it, and
Okay.
it was no knock on the book. Just one of those things where I had to go do some research or something, and I didn't. I don't read a ton of fiction.
Do yourself a favor when we're off the air tonight. Just do a quick Google search for Andy Weir's The Egg.
All right.
It's like I said, it's like 300 words long, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But I had forgotten about that, but that's totally you'll see when you read it. It's one of those you can't even really if it's 300 words, what can you say without spoiling it, right?
Right.
So I just give it a read. I think you'll like it.
Yeah, I've been meaning to read that.
It's and then
I think I can manage that.
yeah,
I can
Short.
commit to 300 words.
that's flash fiction for sure. I was going to say so. I don't know if there's going to be any body hopping between man and animal in your books, but I
hope so.
I was reminded as well of is it the Shaggy Dog? Like those, there were some old movies there too, right? Where the guy would get
Disney movies.
right, where the guy would get like swapped into the body of the family dog or something, and
Yeah.
so there might be some old ideas there that you can pull from too.
I tend to move away. Like if you tell me that something's been done, I'm going to want to do the opposite.
So you have to twist it somehow.
My contrarian nature, yeah.
Yeah, I think the only example I can think of, I mean, we mentioned in passing Quantum Leap, in terms of head hopping or body hopping, but I guess my throw-out would be a video game. Did any of you guys ever play Chrono Cross?
No. I'm just glad you didn't say Final Fantasy X again.
I know. He always talks about Final Fantasy.
Oh, okay, that was twice. Come on. You guys are extrapolating. Okay, anyway, so it's an interesting premise in Chrono Cross. Basically, it's this idea that this main character can cross between parallel dimensions of the same universe, and it's kind of a convoluted story. But about halfway through, the bad guy that he's chasing ends up swapping bodies with the main character. So for half the game, you're the hero, but then in a weird reversal of events, you end up being in the body of the villain. and basically everybody hates you at that point, and so you have to win. You have to negotiate through that, and I thought that was interesting. Like
Cool.
the whole idea of, even jumpers switching bodies in a way.
Has it got guns in it?
Yeah,
That's the kind
I
of
think
game
there's a
I
couple
play.
of characters that have guns, but it's more of a rustic kind of world. There's really no.
Has it got explosions in it? Because Patrick really likes that.
There might be a couple of explosions, but it's not. Yeah,
Explosions are pretty cool.
laid back. It's a pretty laid back world.
But when you're talking about switching worlds, that reminded me of another. Again, it's not quite body swapping, but in a way, it's another one of these ones that kind of is a bit of a twist on it. And I was trying to look it up, but if it was a Jet Li movie, where there's multiple universes and he can travel between them, and each time he kills one of his other selves, he gains their power. And so the movie kind of picks up where this guy has been going from universe to universe, killing all of his other selves and gaining their power. So now there's only 2 of them left. And the guy who hasn't been jumping around, he's been getting stronger, and he has no idea what's going on and why he's been gaining all of these powers. So the movie kind of picks up where these 2 Jet Lis are in. The bad guy Jet Li comes in to take out the last other Jet Li, and so the movie is him fighting himself.
It's like Highlander, but like.
Yeah, I can't remember. I was trying to remember what the heck that movie was
one.
That's
interesting.
So basically, their powers are divided among all of the various Jet Lis, and that's why as they're trimmed, they each grow more powerful.
Right. So slowly over time, as once there's only 2 left, they share all of that power. And then they have, again, like you said, kind of like Highlander, there can be only one. They have to fight and see who gets to keep all the power.
That could never happen. It's ridiculous.
I mean, it's not like we're reading fiction or anything.
Excuse me.
It's just nonsense, if you ask me.
The One. It was called The One, strangely enough.
Okay. Yeah, I never saw that one.
Took it right from the Highlander.
Can only be one, yeah. Let me see. I have.
When do you think they're gonna remake that movie?
Oh, they're probably gonna do a TV series. That's probably what they'll do.
That's the way to go. There was a TV series, though, wasn't there?
Yeah, it was for
way
a long
better
time.
than the movies, I thought.
Yeah, a girl I was friends with absolutely loved the guy that was on there, so I used to hear about him all the time, and I thought he was a horrible actor.
He was pretty bad.
I just keep trying to think of what terrible. They're gonna remake Back to the Future with Kristen Wiig as Marty McFly and Melissa McCarthy as Biff Tannen. No, I'm just saying that's what they're gonna do. That's coming. It's coming.
Yeah.
Mm.
Anyway. I actually had wondered. Yeah. Oh, go ahead. We had a question from the audience.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. We have Matt Brotherton says he was throwing in a recommendation, and that is the evil jumper from Quantum Leap. And then he also mentioned the superior Spider-Man was Doc Ock in Peter Parker's body, which is kind of interesting.
I think we've had somebody on talking about that before.
I think we have too.
Because that rings a bell.
Yeah, he asked a question as well, and he says, "Would you consider movies like Trading Places to be along the same lines?"
Well,
I've not seen Trading Places.
trading. Oh, you've never seen Trading Places? Mm-hmm. Eddie Murphy. And Dan Aykroyd and. That's a great old movie. But they're not. Again, it's maybe a different take on the idea. That's where the 2 sort of the money guys screw with these 2 guys and make the rich guy poor and the poor guy rich, and it's hilarious. And they're not switching bodies, but they're switching lives.
Yeah,
that reminds me of another great movie with Nicolas Cage, and that's The Family Man. Have you guys seen that? It's where he
is that the one where he's yelling about the bees or something?
No, he's this businessman. He's a jerk.
Great movie and Nicolas Cage in the scene.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I know. I happen to like it, but
he does that in every movie.
Well, once you've seen one Nicolas Cage movie, you've seen them all, right? But he's this entrepreneur, businessman. He's a CEO, and he's got this really awesome life, but he's single and unhappy, and something happened. I don't remember what the catalyst is to the story, but something happens and he ends up in an alternate reality where he is a family man. He's got a family, he's got children, and he wants to get back to his old life, but he ends up falling back in love with the sweetheart that got away, and it's this weird. You never really know why. Like there's an angel involved somehow. Um, yeah, but it's interesting.
I feel like I've seen this. I don't know.
It's a pretty famous movie. Yeah,
Okay,
it's pretty. It's interesting. It makes you think, what if? But I guess maybe that's similar to kind of like the Trading Places.
So
And
John,
one that go ahead.
well, John, were there like since you were reading my book and you had obviously written a book of your own with jumping, were there things that were there like difficulties that you felt that native to writing this genre that you and I like went different ways or something, like where you wondered like, well, why did he do that or anything like that?
Yeah, there were. Like, my character comes in as sort of like your character comes in as a blank slate as far as his or her history. Mine has a history, but comes in completely unaware of anything about the host. You use the word host. I use the word ride. My character looks at it as a vacation. Your character looks at it almost as something that must be protected and preserved. My guy does that a little bit too, but he's a little bit more selfish.
Well, your guy's waking up in like bad people's bodies, though, right?
Yeah, it makes it easy. So that's the other thing. You've got more to kind of lose from your soul's perspective, whereas mine gets sort of a break. But and I think this is not a spoiler because it happens pretty early. But like you have access, your guy or girl has access to the memories of the host to some extent. Mine doesn't at all. I have, and you, I forget how you dealt with accents, but I relegated accents to like something in the brain itself that can't be denied. So I had to deal with all the kind of little mechanical things a certain way, and you dealt with your mechanical things a certain way. But I love the fact that we both had to deal with the same types of mechanical things. Like you talking to somebody, and like suddenly you have like you could have like the wrong accent, and they're gonna like, how come you're talking like a cowboy? I had to solve it my way, and I guess you solved it your way by sort of tapping into that part of the brain or whatever.
Yeah.
You dealt with relationships that spanned or friendships that spanned multiple rides a certain way, and I did too. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, I definitely I like the whole playing with memory thing because I absolutely love science of the brain and psychology and stuff like that. And I was reading The Brain by David Eagleman and watching the miniseries when we were writing this, and I love the idea of memory as being this fluid thing that is not it's not data that is permanent. It is always changing every time you access it, and we do play with that, and I play with it a little more in the other books that follow.
By the way, oh, good.
Go ahead.
That's a perfect example. Like I treated it like data. I have a crystalline sequence of events that can be broken down to milliseconds. Boom, 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 boom. The memories will never change once you have them. But you didn't do that. You had them all flowing together, all like soup and everything like that. And you couldn't tell what was. Sometimes you couldn't tell what was like the main character's thoughts versus the host's memories.
Right.
I thought that was damn cool the way you did it. You handled it finely, sir.
Oh, thank you.
And I interrupted you. What were you saying? So.
I'm not sure, but I know that
Sorry.
Well, the theory about the changing memories is how memories are stored, and every time you access them, you're basically playing them, but you're adding or taking away something from it. And there was another science program, I think it was Nova on PBS, where they were talking about removing fear from memories, and they had a scientist, I think in the Netherlands, I don't remember exactly, but she was doing research about people that had a fear of spiders, a very specific fear. And what they found is that they were able to isolate the fear from the memory. And how they did it was very, very interesting. They would give somebody, they would put somebody in a room and put their hand in a tank with a spider, like a tarantula, not just any spider. And immediately, they had to make sure that the person felt the fear, like when they were doing it. Not, if they didn't feel the fear, this will not work. And what happened is they gave the person a medication, which basically, I think it was it might have been a blood pressure medication. I don't remember. What it happened is it basically blocked the fear response in the brain from happening. Like there's a response that your brain has when fear is triggered, and what happened is it blocked the fear response in the brain, and the next time the person came back to touch the spider, they had the anxiety and fear beforehand wasn't present as much. And each time they did this, they were able to completely remove the fear of the spider through a medication blocking the fear response. And I think that's absolutely amazing that memory and fear and anxiety and all these things are so not understood yet, and there are physical ways to actually affect them.
Did they talk about the Abdagala at all with that?
Yes,
Is
yes,
that
it
what it's
did.
called?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, Dave,
that's fascinating.
You've both read the book and seen the show?
The brain?
Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So I've read the book. Is there benefit to watching the show on top of that? Were you watching it to share it with your family, or were there extra tidbits there that are?
No, I actually watched it before I read the book because it was on over a course I think 7 weeks or whatever, and it got to the point where like I didn't want to wait any longer, so I went and bought the book because I just wanted to read like where they hadn't gone yet. But then I went and read through it again, and I think there is a little bit more in the TV show. I mean, it's 7 hours of material, so obviously there's going to be more. But it's good to see the examples, and I think it's something. If it's something you're very interested in, then definitely a different sort of exposure will help you, learn more about it.
Yeah, well, I
rather than
thought
just reading it.
it was another book that was one of my top reads last year, and not just because it was interesting, but I think it helped me and probably helps other people just understand your own memories and processes, and it just kind of that's a book that isn't just about the science, but it kind of helps you understand your own life a little bit better.
Yeah, and one of the things they did talk about in there in the brain, and they showed on the TV show, was basically how people are basically how they can become capable of these horrible things like genocide and stuff, and how easy and slippery that slope is, that people can become that, and how natural it is for us to slip into that state, and it's scary and enlightening. And if any of these things interest you, definitely check that out. And The Brain might even eventually be on Netflix if it's not already on there. So.
Well, I'm in Canada, so we have two movies on Netflix, and like the first episode of Mad Men, and that's it. We got like 3 things on Netflix here.
You can get it on Amazon. I bought the DVD set for some people for Christmas. It was like $20-something, so definitely worth it.
They can probably get it from the library too.
There you go. What's the library? You have those in Canada?
Oh yeah, because we don't have Netflix. We have Amazon Prime, but we don't get any of the TV shows or the movies. We don't get whatever they call that. What's their streaming service? Is it just called Prime? It's just part of...
Yeah, Prime streaming, Amazon Video.
Yeah, we don't get that. We don't get any of the cool stuff here.
But you guys have Trailer Park Boys or whatever, so...
It's true. So, any final thoughts from anyone on body swapping or any of the other directions that we went tonight before we start to wrap things up?
No, I guess not. I did have one little one. What was the most difficult thing you think when you were writing your book about body swapping, like perspectives, limited view, that kind of thing? What made it hard to write, and maybe how did you fix it?
I think the hardest part was just tying all these people's lives together, and sort of connecting the dots and also setting up future things that will happen. That to me was the most complex part. As far as like how the perspective and stuff, I don't remember it being too difficult. There were a couple instances in either the second or third book where we were in some teenage characters, and I just wanted to make sure that I was writing, not too adult, but at the same time, I do have an easy out that this is another person experiencing these people's lives. So there was some wiggle room there where I didn't have to get the POV dead spot on. So that was a bit of fortune there, I guess.
I have a follow-up question. So like right now I'm writing a book with a lot of like 14 and 15-year-olds, and that's one of my main concerns is, like, I'm sitting here writing friends with kids, like, what kind of foul language do they use? What do they talk about? Because I don't remember, So, I mean, did you find yourself doing that kind of stuff?
I mean, every now and then, like, I'll watch YouTube videos to kind of get a feel for like what different sorts of people are talking about, but even that isn't necessarily accurate as far as like the average person, I don't think, because anybody that's like on YouTube is projecting a little bit more than what they normally would be like. I feel like I have a decent grip on how teenagers are, because we did write one young adult book for Nevermore, and I think we did pretty good with that. But that's kind of because I remember my own high school experience pretty vividly in a lot of ways. So obviously, like trendy stuff and fads and stuff, I'm not gonna get right, and I don't even try really. I kind of try to avoid anything that will really date the story too much. Sean will tend to throw in like TV show references all the time, though, which I kind of try to get rid of if I can. I don't know if I answered your question.
No, that actually gave me some good ideas, like going on YouTube and stuff like that.
Yeah. Find what the cool kids are doing.
Just go, John, just like walk down to your local public school and hang out on the playground for after minutes.
Wear a trench coat.
Take a camera.
You won't look conspicuous.
Videotape the playground so you can take it home and watch it later.
That's what I'll do.
Between that and your Google search history, as
everybody will be wondering, why isn't John on this episode? Like, he's gone. What happened to John?
He was doing research.
Maybe they'll just burst in the door in the middle of the show, and then the show will go viral, and I'll have done my job. And
there you go. Hey, whatever sells books, huh?
Exactly.
That's it. Okay, I froze for a minute there. Hopefully, things kept going for you guys. It sounded like it did when I got back. Hopefully, okay, good. So hopefully, YouTube caught all of that while I was missing. So, Dave, where's the best place for people to sort of connect with you and find you these days on the internet?
CollectiveInkwell.com or Twitter, the David Wright or the David W. Wright. I don't even know my own name. The David W. Wright.
Okay, great. Thanks for coming again.
Me.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And to our listeners and viewers, thanks for showing up. Thanks for dropping by. And as usual, if you have a moment to stop by iTunes and drop us a rating or review, it'd really be appreciated. And we will see you in a week. Have a great week, guys.
Thanks.
See ya.
Take care.